Today we're going to do some watercolouring, one of my favourite all-time things. It makes me happy. I just love painting and seeing the different colours go on in layers. It's just so nice. And the wonderful thing about finding Stampin' Up 15 years ago was that I could get a little bit lazy and I didn't have to draw things. I could just stamp them and then colour them. So we're going to be using the hand-penned suite, which you'll find on page 105, I think, of your catalogue, your annual catalogue. It's a really awesome set to colour, and so far I've made a couple of cards with it. So I'll just turn the camera down and we'll get started, I think. If you have this set, why don't you go and grab it and grab some Fluid 100 watercolour paper or any sort of watercolour paper, shimmery white, anything like that. You could even work on the thick A4 white cardstock as long as you don't use too much water. So just grab that, and I'm using the 2020-2022 in colours today, just for something a little bit brighter. I've got a couple of other samples to show you using the 2021-23 in colours, but I thought I'd go for the brighter one. All right, well, hopefully that will do us. Now, I wanted to just show you the hand pen suite. Obviously comes with dies, which is great, which means the cutting out is ever so easy. I like to do mine or store mine this way, so I put with the newer photopolymer, you actually have the designs on the back of the cover, and I like to put my stamps directly onto that and just keep that thicker piece of cellophane, what do you call it, window sheet over the top, and then I put a bit of magnet and my dies all in one, and that way, because I'm a bit forgetful, I don't forget where or which dies go with which set. Anyway, that's all good. So looking at the actual pages in the catalogue, you can see that you've got the stamp set with the images, and we're going to be using this image today with a little bit of this one from the design I've done, but you can see all the lovely designs that are actually there for you in the book, and that's a really good start for you to just get started with making cards. There's also this lovely paper that is, oh, it's up in the papers section. I don't have any with me, but again, that makes really beautiful cards. And on top of that, there is the note cards. Now, what are they? The Making Memories. The hand-penned Memories and More cards and envelopes. That's this lot. You can see there's lots of really nice designs there. This is very like some of the designer series paper, double-sided, all of these, so you can chop and change. And I whipped up the beginnings of a very quick card, just using one of the card bases, which are here all ready for you. Simply fold and then add whatever one of these extras that you like. Now you can see they're made to just have a little border all the way around, so choose carefully. That one goes quite well, and you could just put a lovely greeting on a nice shape there with a bit of ribbon, and you've got a card. Bingo, it's all there quick and easy for you. I'll just finish this one off as I was planning on doing. I'll do that a bit later while we're hanging about waiting for something to dry or something similar to that. so that card, the ribbon I've used is the 2021-2023 in color ribbon, and that's the mauve one. I keep forgetting the names of things. It's the trouble with getting old. It's fresh freesia. And today we're actually going to be using the magenta, the polished pink, and that goes really well with the earlier in color, the magenta. So they're pretty useful even if you don't have all of this, the current in colors. Right, so we're going to get started actually on the card that we're going to make, because mainly this is all about watercoloring, and I'm sure that's what you're really interested in. Now, I pre-stamped my images because I just wanted to save a bit of time. I've used the Fluid 100 watercolor paper, and that is really lovely watercolor paper. It's 100% cotton. I'm not sure whether it's cold pressed or not, but it's really quite a nice finish on the paper, so be quite comfortable with using that. Now, normally you would use StazOn. I can't use StazOn. I feel like I've been hit by a Mack truck if I use StazOn, and that is really uncomfortable, I can assure you. So what we will do is I have some basic black, which is also waterproof when it's dry, and I have stamped with the basic black. Hopefully there'll be another ink that comes out that's not StazOn, that is permanent for us that can't use it. So we'll just cross our fingers for that. I'm also going to use the water painters. Now you can use these, or you can use normal brushes. I tend to use these as normal brushes, and I just have a little bowl of water there and I dip them into the water rather than use them as a brush that already has the water in it. And I like to use the larger and the smaller ones depending on which part of the painting I'm doing. Now, as I said, I'm going to use the 2020-2022 in colors. I think that's what they are. Yes, they're last year's to next year. And there's a couple of rules with watercolor painting that is really quite general and easy for you to remember. The first rule is always leave white spaces. So if you're thinking here that one of these is going to have some highlights on it, it's going to be closer to you, or the sun shining on it, leave it white. And always, so that's rule number one. Rule number two is start light. You can always add extra color in other layers. And rule number three, if you want to change the color, so if you have pink underneath and you want it to be mauve, and so you want it to put a light layer of blue over the top, there's two things you can do. You either let it dry totally and the colors won't mix, or you do wet in wet where the colors will mix but you'll have less control over them. So we're going to get started with the painting, which is always fun. I like to use my ink pads, squeeze them from the back. They've got a little bit more give at the back, and then you end up with a nice little palette of color there. Have yourself either a tissue. I've got my trusty chamois here, or something that will give you, I hope you can see that. Yes, I think you can. not too bright, and we're just going to go in layering the colour, leaving, as I said, leaving some white bits. And don't worry if your colour runs out a little bit, you can always go in and add it. The point with watercolour is that normally your strokes will show up a little bit, and that's part of the characteristic of watercolour. It's part of what I think is a lovely characteristic in watercolour paper. Now, I mentioned before about wet in wet, and this is what I'm doing here. You can see by adding extra strong ink in there onto wet that it's actually bleeding and moving up along the areas that I've already coloured, and so I'm not getting any change in definition. Don't have your brush too wet either, because that will change things quite a bit. Now, if you're how can I put it? If you're wanting to add some different colour, I'm going to let that dry off a little bit, because I'm going to go over it with blue because I want it to be mauve. But let's go to a yellow now. So clean off that brush. Not sure if I've got yellow. Oh yes, there'll be enough there. So we'll just pick up some of that yellow and go around here. See how free and easy? It doesn't matter if you go outside your lines. Number one, you're going to be cutting them out with the dies, but number two, it's part of the joy of watercolour. Now, I'm going to go back in now and get a little bit of this darker pink in here, because I want it to blend. See how that runs? It's gorgeous, isn't it? It's just really nice. So we're going to do that with a few of these. I want three of these pretty much the same. Oh, that's a bit dark. Going against all my intuition here, telling you to go light, and I go in really dark. Sometimes that happens, but you know, with painting and watercolour, it is just so free and easy, and I can't paint upside down. I don't know if you can or not, but I can't. Just laying the colour in there. I love it. I've been cleaning out, I don't know if you can see in the background, I've been cleaning out under my stairs, which is part of my craft room here. And I used to, well, I did keep all of my old art stuff from when I did a lot more art in there, and oh, I've found all sorts of wondrous things. I've found I found my 10-year high school reunion from the year I spent in America, and information on all the kids that I graduated with from 1979, which was very interesting reading. I sat and read that for a while instead of doing what I should be doing, getting ready for this, but that was fun. And I found an old Bali umbrella that my youngest daughter used to live in, or she did university in Jakarta for a year or so while she was doing her Asian Studies specialist, and so that's coming out. That's going to go down to the Coast House. Oh, and I've found so many things that I used to do that I think I'm going to hand on to my little 5-year-old granddaughter now. She should enjoy doing a lot of these things, which will be fun. Now a green. We've got Just Jade, which is probably a bit green for these leaves, but I'm going to do a little bit of that with them. I'm going to let those other colours dry a bit first. Just put that one up there. Let's see if we... Ooh, it's very green. Never mind, we'll just keep it nice and light. And we can add some blue into that later to make it look more the appropriate colour. Now you see if I add a little bit of green into there, that it neutralizes those out. So that's one thing you've got to be a little bit careful with your watercolors, is layering colors that will neutralize. And if you know anything about colors, you'll know that opposites on the color wheel will neutralize each other, or in other words, make them go a little bit brown and muddy. And so you need to be very careful. In layman's terms, for example, you wouldn't put green on pink because it'll go a brownie color, just like I did. So we're keeping it, again, nice and light. See the white spaces? When you're starting out, that's probably one of the hardest things to do, is to leave those white spaces. But it's ever so important, and you will find that you will get used to doing that, and it's amazing how much more life your painting will have by doing that. So you can see we're moving along fairly quickly here. Next I'm going to go to the Misty Moonlight, and I'll move those away. Put that here. I've only used the one brush so far, just making sure it's not too wet sometimes. And the Misty Moonlight now, because these should be a little bit drier now, we're going to go in and add some layers in here to get the mauve that I'm after. And again, don't be afraid to put some of this secondary colour over your white areas, because it just gives a little bit more life. I do tend to, oops, that's a bit dark, like to use the blue. Oh, that was a bit of a mess. I don't think I'll use that one. That'll be hidden in the actual painting or the actual card, I've decided. Don't like that at all. See how we've got, instead of the blue, we've got a really nice mauvey colour here that I was after. And that's because I allowed this to dry. And you can see then where the actual painting bits have gone. Now I'm going to also add some of this blue over the green. Just tidy that down, or tone that down a little bit. And we might even, in a minute, add some of the yellow to highlight it up a little bit. So there's all different things that you can do. I don't know whether you find it easy to paint the same, like without turning my page. Like I'm turning my page every which way because I find it easier to paint in a certain way. All art is individual, and you shouldn't worry about what other people say, except for perhaps techniques where you can actually learn techniques and then you apply them to yourself to make it the easiest and most enjoyable for you. So a little bit of mauve in here, using up this blue quite well. And of course these don't have to be the same. All flowers are a little bit different, and so if you find that one of yours is more blue than the others, well, that's fine. Okay, so that's, I just wanted to have a little bit more yellow, I think, in those leaves. So remember, pressing from the back. Oh, and we get ourselves a nice little well of colour. Let's see. Oh, yes, there we go. Yellow is a great colour to use for brightening something up. And in fact, we can even put a little bit of yellow into our pinky colours here to really brighten those up. It just gives it more depth for some reason. I'm going to just go. It's a little bit hard to see how this is going to look until, if you're new to painting, until you actually cut it out and join all these bits together. It's not all that easy to visualize. I just went outside the lines there, but you know, I really don't care. It works really nicely, I think. Some of these are going to be a little bit different. That one's got the yellow in. They've all got a little bit of yellow in the leaves. See how quickly I'm working too? You don't want to labour over watercolour because it loses its spontaneity, and that's one of the things that's really quite important with watercolour. A little bit more water on that brush as we go for a little bit more colour in these yellow ones. I'm going to build that up just a tiny bit. Don't want these to all be the same, so that looks all a little bit different. Good. And the design I decided on, I was going to use a couple of these flowers too, so I'm just going to quickly do those, but I think I'm going to do those in the pink. So let's go. I think where the petals are and where the shadows might be, where the highlights might be, and get that in. Stampin' Up's pretty good with their, well, they're very good, I shouldn't say pretty good, they're awesome with their designs, because these lines, for example, show you where some sort of shadow might be, and that's always really good for helping you with your colouring. So that'll do for that one. I think that should be enough for the design that I want. Just go into the purple. I'm going to need some more blue in a minute. I don't want too much of it though. I've got some water on there, so that might be a bit of a problem. I'll just get rid of that. Now that's a lot of extra blue. Just picking up a tiny, tiny bit here. I don't often talk when I'm painting, so I'm actually finding this quite difficult to talk and paint at the same time, but hopefully you'll be working along with me or just watching and enjoying. So I'm going to leave it at that for now, and we'll close up our ink pads. Do you find often with these new ones that when you shut them, they don't shut down properly? So you really need to give them quite a bit of a thump. I've occasionally, after a class, found a whole heap of my ink pads all, oh, that's stiff, all open and not shut down properly. So the only colour I did not use in the painting was the cinnamon cider. So that's brown, which you would often think would be found in these type of drawings, but I tend to like to steer clear of black and brown and those colours, because they tend to be dulling colours. They make things quite a lot duller than what they are, and you kind of need to be aware of those, or beware of those in watercolor painting, and keep your colors fairly pure. Things will eventually, you'll find your own style and you'll find things that you'd like to do. Now, if you have followed along, it's time now to allow this to dry for a little bit and to get our card and card base ready. I'm just going to get rid of that wet top cover there because I don't want, I'll save that for later because it's still quite good. It's just wet. Didn't want it to be wet. Okay, so we're going to start for the card. It's going to be a long card like this, and the measurements are the designer series paper. We'll start with that because that comes in 6 by 6. So we're cutting that down to 6 by 3 inches or 15.2 by 7.6 centimeters. Now we're a little bit crooked here, that's better. The next thing we need is a white mat around that, and I've used the thick A4 white because that's what I had on hand, but you can use your basic white without any problem. And that's just 1/4 inch bigger, so it now becomes 6 1/4 inches by 3 1/4 inches, or 16 centimeters by 8.4 centimeters. And I'm having a white base, so that's kind of, to me, a little bit bland. So I decided to cut a weenie, a teeny little black border here. And I tend to do this by eye, so I would just line up my white and then both together like that, hold them in place and then cut them. If you need measurements, the black, the second mat is basically 6 1/3 inches by 3 1/3, or just a smidge bigger than the other one. And I know that's not much help for those of you that love measurements, but I don't love measurements, and they do my head in most of the time, so I do everything by eye. So I'm doing really well giving you the measurements for these. So that's what we've got. So next we're going to, these should be dry enough by now. Oh, we can actually adhere these two together, and I'm going to use just the Tombow for that, or the oh, we've got the news on now instead of the music in the background. Never mind. I always warm this up before I start, and you find it flows much more easily and you don't get those horrible blobs that you can sometimes get. So a little bit of glue on there. Lie that down on the side so you don't have to worry about it next time with a big push. And the Tombow is really good for this because it gives you that little bit of wiggle room if you happen to get it in the wrong spot in the first place. So there we have that happening, ready to go. And I'm going to leave the rest of those now until I have my images cut out. So let's put the, I'm just going to turn that radio down. We don't want that when there's all talking. Use our lovely Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And we're going to get out our dies. So this is the one that we're going to need first. I'm just going to turn it this way because some people can do it sideways, but I don't seem to be able to do that. A little bit challenged in that area. And I do want to get it pretty well perfect. Okay, so because it's just a die, we have our base platform, our number 2, a number 3, our paper and die, and then another number 3 on top. Press it down so it's not going to wiggle for you. Oh, very crooked there, but still. So I'm going to cut out the 3 of these for the design of the card that I'm making. I find this watercolor paper cuts beautifully, and it gives you just that little bit of extra dimension, which is really nice. Just bear with me while I cut these so I can concentrate, and hopefully you'll be cutting some as well if you've been working along with me. If not, we'll try and save this video so it'll be there as a reference for you. I hope you take note of some of the tips I've given you about watercolor painting. Everyone's style is a little different, but those tips of making sure that you leave white spaces in particular is such an important thing in watercolor painting, because otherwise you might as well just color the image in with textures. You know, if you're going to color everything solidly, it loses the essence of what watercolor painting is all about. So nearly there. Oops, that one came out all by itself. Very clever. So we'll change the die now to the second die, because I only want a couple of the single flowers. I don't want the whole kit and caboodle there. Right. Put that one away for later. So, have any of you, assuming some of you are demonstrators that are watching, have you got your Eden's Garden yet? If you're not a demonstrator, you can always join and get previews of new products, but if you are, it looks like a lovely kit. Mine arrived yesterday, so, well, actually I think it arrived a couple of days ago, but I've been a bit busy, so I haven't had a chance to do a lot of the work that I actually wanted to do in looking at bits and pieces. So there we go. Oops, this one's still got a little bit in there. Get rid of that. And I was going to just cut these ones out. My 9-year-old granddaughter said to me the other day, she said, "Grandma, my teacher taught me something really good. When you're cutting, you move the paper, not the scissors." And I said, "Oh, really?" Because I've been saying that for years. I said, "Well, your teacher must be very clever." Now, I'm going to use the Happy Thoughts stamp set. I want to keep something just nice, and so this is your Happy Thoughts stamp set. Well, I think now that I see this, it's going to be a bit big. Not quite how I envisaged it, but that's okay. So now, that's the other thing, of course. Our card base is much, much bigger than the background center motif. So it's always fine to go outside your card base, your motif area. So let's take those out. Just get rid of that extra little bit in there. And I wanted this one to be down a bit lower, so I might chop one of those off. Okay, so this is the fun. This is fun, this part actually, with rearranging and arranging and layering and doing all sorts of things like that. So if you find that one is really, one of the motifs, as in the flower, is good, maybe you want two, maybe you want to crisscross them a little bit. Just because I didn't really plan this, well, I planned it, but it looked different in my head. You can chop and change these. You can have some of the leaves going in front and some behind. I think I'll have all of those behind though. Okay, that's not too bad. Nah. Maybe I need to put that one over there. This one more up. And then I can do a smaller greeting perhaps. Yes, so anyway, we're going to now use some of the ribbon from the current in colours, and I've found that the polished pink goes pretty well with the Magenta Madness. So this is Magenta Madness from the earlier in colours, and this is from the current, so that goes quite well. So I'm just going to attach that underneath this one here, and put some of my motifs in and around that. I've just got to work out exactly where it needs to go. That's more what I wanted here. All right, so getting there. I'll just attach the ribbon. And for that, I'm still using my fast fuse. Love my fast fuse. So we're going to go like so. So that one will have a little bit of the Tombow behind it. That's a lot. That's, you know, I lie it down so it doesn't do that. So on a day when it's actually flowing a lot, you need to be super careful. So let's stick that one down. Oh, that has actually, I'm going to chop it so that'll go up further. Don't you love how you can manipulate these things really easily? Terrific. Okay. Now that's not quite, oh yeah, that's all right. And this one, we're going to just chop that off there and pop him up on dimensionals. And this one is going to go under there. It's a little bit different to how it was before, but that's the joy of being able to do these things on the fly. No, I think I want that down there. That's better. So that one's going up on dimensional, so this one will go down flat. Awesome. So we'll just get some dimensionals now. I'll go for the bigger ones because they'll, you know, of course the dimensionals come in large and small, which is lovely. The small ones are really good for little areas, and the large ones save you time if you've got some bigger areas to raise up. So just going to put a couple in strategic places here. And I might just pop a little one. The little ones I find are a little more difficult to handle, but that's okay. I just keep having a look at and seeing what this looks like on the iPad, because things look really quite different when you're looking at them with a different view to what when you're actually working with them, and it's kind of nice to see. That one's going to go there. Oh, that's the tombow that was left over. All right, so I'm going to just go back quickly for a moment, make sure that that's not going to stick to anything. That's where your eraser comes in really, really handy. Or if you don't have an eraser, your embossing buddy, just whip that over the gluey part, and that will stop the stickiness being too bad. Don't want stickiness all over the back of my card. Now, this card has not folded all that well, so I'm just going to see if I can get that fold to improve. Hold on tight there, and oh, no, it didn't improve much, so I'll use the larger one at the front. That's going to go down, so again with our, might do that on dimensionals. Just adds a little bit to the card if you've got a few different layers. Now I hope you're working along with me, but if not, and I do hope I've introduced the hand pen suite to you. It's really awesome. I'm going to show you a couple of other cards that I've made with it shortly. Now I've got to be concentrating here a little bit and try and get this nice and even. Doesn't matter if the bottom is a little bit thicker than the top, because your eye automatically reduces that bottom bit. Now we're going to go on to put this one on, and you can see that it's starting to take shape. Just noticed the little dimensional on there missed totally, so the paper totally, so that's funny. Okay, so we're starting to move along now. Now I had planned on placing that there, but I think that's probably a bit of overkill. Let's see if we go in under there a little bit. I'm going to do the greeting next, and so we'll see. I'm just going to need a smallish greeting. I think I was going to do a larger one, but I think we'll go with a smallish one because it maybe just a simple thank you, and I can send that to someone who places an order. So if you'd like to place an order, if you'd like this card, just write a comment and place an order with me, and you can have it if you're the first one to do so. Okie dokie, I'm going to need to take that off there for a moment. Now go back to my, I would normally just use Memento for this because it's nice and strong, but it's on another table, so we'll go to the basic black. Love the Memento, it's a really good dark black. This one sometimes, as it's getting old, isn't quite so fabulous, although that looks pretty darn good. Okay, thank you. That's very odd that the H is higher than the T. Never mind. Oh, bit of a smudge there. One thing I can't stand is a smudge on my stamping, especially with the words. So we're going to fix that immediately. What have I done with my chamois? There it is. I normally just stamp off the excess there first and then go on to the chamois. It's much better, I think, with the photopolymer stamps, the chamois, but I don't have my Stampin' Scrub on hand, so that will do for now. Okay, so that's from the Happy Thoughts stamp set, which is one I like. I often buy the greeting stamp sets and just keep them forever because they really are so nice. I don't think I've got a die that's going to do that justice for now, so I'm just going to chop that. Just make a little flag at the end there. And we'll pop that in behind there. Thank you. Maybe up there. And have you tried these gorgeous little bumblebees? They are part of the embellishment kit. They really are quite gorgeous for finishing off a card. So I'm just going to do that like so. We'll put the little bumblebee on, and then I'll show you some of the other cards that I've made. Now, I haven't stuck that one down yet, have I? Not sure if I want that or not. I think I probably do, but just exactly where. There's another point. See, I was going to tie a bow, but it certainly doesn't need a bow. That one's really a little bit big. Let's try for the next one down. Now, I haven't been looking at any comments. If any of you are with me or commenting, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. That's a much better size now. That other one was way too big. We'll put that aside for another time. And just put that little guy down on a tiny little dimensional so that he's up a bit. And I really like leaving the images or the elements of the card what I call free, so that they, there we go, that's better. That just finishes that off. So I'll glue down the, well, that thank you needs to be trimmed a tiny bit, doesn't it? Trim that down a little bit. Oh, I always do that. You know, when you've got these, you actually need to cut them from the top down so from coming towards you, and then they won't wiggle or move on the cutter. Yes, that's better balanced. Not very nice though. Your bone folder comes in handy for a lot of things. When you've got a bit of a rough edge, you just smooth it down with your bone folder. I like that. A little bit of Tombow again. And then we're going to add our bumblebee. And we will be complete. Thank you. Ah, one of my favorite things, the glue dots. Now somewhere, yes, I've got an old poker. Just add a glue dot to the back of this and place him down. Oops, I'd like him to go that way. And there's your completed card. So, did you stamp along with me today? I hope some of you did. I've got a couple of other samples to show you. These ones are using the 2021-23 in colours. So this one is another version. I'll just pop them all together. I think you should be able to see them. So there's that one, just using two, and you can see the difference in these flowers. They were actually, I did all the painting when it was still wet, so we've got a few more neutrals happening there. And then there's the green one. Which was the very first one I did. And I did that for a class at one of the retreats. Well, the retreat that I was planning on holding that, no, this one did get held, that's right. But due to good old lockdown, we haven't been able to have those. Now, I think that's about it. I just want to go over with you those technique hints that I had. Remember that the most important one is to leave white spaces. So if you leave white spaces, you'll find that you're very light. You can see I've left a lot more white spaces in this one than I have in either of those two, and it's much brighter. So all of the cards are fun. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Remember that if you are interested in any more painting ideas, just give me a hoy and I'm happy to help you out there. If you would like to order anything, you can shop with me if you live in Australia at this address, or just go look me up on the Stampin' Up website. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.